Do you want to find a stress-free way to buy your next car? Start at CarMax and shop your way. And if you want to browse with confidence, get pre-qualified online with no impact on your credit score and shop cars within your budget. From luxury cars to family rides, CarMax has options for almost every price range, including more than 25,000 cars priced under $25,000. So hey, want to get started? Just head to CarMax.com for details and get pre-qualified today. Want to drive? CarMax.
Everybody, welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today on the pod, we got to talk about something very, very serious. Actually, there's a number of serious things that I want to talk about, but, you know, when I woke up this morning, my plan was I was going to talk about Artemis yesterday and how incredible that accomplishment was for NASA and for the crew. I thought that's going to be a nice feel-good segment for the pod. And then I saw the story about our finance minister, who is now going to recuse himself from making decisions related to the Alto high-speed train. Because lo and behold, as it turns out, this $90 billion project, his wife is a VP at Alto. What? What are you talking about? His wife is a vice president at Alto, and he's deciding to give them $90 billion. It's crazy. I thought that, well, they're right there, Scott. That's the thing. That's what we got to talk about. And then a message came out this morning on social media, and this one is serious, guys. This one is really, really serious. So let me read you the post, and then we're going to get into a little bit of audio. And I think everyone should listen very carefully because I'm pretty sure that we have now crossed the line. This from President Donald J. Trump. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. However, now that we have complete and total regime change where different, smarter, and less radicalized minds prevail, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Who knows? We will find out tonight. One of the most important moments in the long and complex history of the world. 47 years of extortion, corruption, and death will finally end. God bless the great people of Iran. What does Donald Trump mean by a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again? A whole civilization will die tonight. First off, again, that is not how the leader of the free world is supposed to talk. Messages like that, there's way too much open to interpretation there. And frankly, when he's talking about wiping out an entire civilization, to me, that screams nuclear. To me, that says he's seriously considering or will use nuclear weapons. And we should never, ever, under any circumstances, condone something like that. We never should. Hey, listen, when it comes to Iran, Donald Trump is the one who did it. But the Americans have been talking about this for a very long time. Here's some audio that just resurfaced from Hillary Clinton. Listen to this.
I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible thing to say, but those people who run Iran need to understand that, because that perhaps will deter them from doing something that would be reckless, foolish, and tragic.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton was just one of many presidents who had Iran on their mind, but never actually, figuratively, pulled the trigger and went in and got rid of that regime. I think the regime probably had to go. I think the Iranian people are happier that that regime is gone. But this Strait of Hormuz thing, one that I don't even understand. I mean, to me, if I'm drawing up battle plans against Iran and I'm thinking about what their next moves might be, I probably would have secured the Strait of Hormuz before I even went and invaded Iran. That's probably should have been job one. But since it did go down like this, and since the Americans have had no luck trying to get that strait reopened, we are in the situation we're in. For the president to say something like an entire civilization is going to be wiped out is completely and totally reckless and unbecoming of the leader of the free world. Yesterday, the president was talking to the media. Here he is.
You saw the bridge. The bridge went. We were very close to a deal. And then I got a call from Mr. Witkoff, Mr. Kushner, and JD saying, I think they're breaking the deal. I said, tell them that's okay. Don't worry about it. But tell them to look out their window and watch. And within 45 minutes, I gave the order to knock out the biggest bridge. I gave the order, knock out the biggest bridge in, I believe, the Middle East, but the biggest bridge in Iran. And within 10 minutes after I gave that order, that bridge was over. So
I want to point out that attacking civilian infrastructure is a war crime. It's an actual war crime. You're not allowed to do that. War has rules. As crazy as it is, it has rules to it. And one of the things you don't do is target civilians and civilian infrastructure. President Trump is trying to use that civilian infrastructure as a negotiating piece. And I mean, history will tell if that was successful or not. Right now, we don't know. But even threatening to do it, I mean, it feels like he's really, really crossing a line here. And I've given him a lot of runway on this, but it really feels like he has now crossed a line. President Trump speaking yesterday.
You said earlier today during the egg roll that you would like to take Iran's oil, but Americans want U.S. forces home.
correct.
What's that trade-off?
If I had my
Does
choice,
it take too much time?
yeah, because I'm a businessman first. With Venezuela, as you know, the war was over in about 45 minutes. And we have great people running Venezuela, very good people. I mean, the relationship is good. And we are a partner with Venezuela. And we've taken hundreds of millions of barrels, hundreds of millions. Over 100 million barrels already is in Houston, refined and out. And paid for that war many, many times over, many times over. You know, the old days, to the victim. Okay, you know that. To the winner belong the spoils, go the spoils. And I've said, why don't we use it? To the victor, go the spoils. And we don't have that. We haven't had that in this country probably in 100 years, because even the Second World War, you look at the Second World War, we didn't have it with the Second World. We helped rebuild all those countries. We rebuilt Germany. How about Germany telling us that, well, it's not their war. We had nothing to do with it. They wanted me to go and tell them everything I was doing. We didn't know anything about it. Well, if I would have told them, they would have leaked it, and we wouldn't have been nearly as successful, possibly, right? But to the victor belong the spoils. So we haven't heard that in, I think, maybe hundreds of years.
President Trump suggesting that if he attacks Iran and he is successful in that invasion, then the oil belongs to him and to America. I don't know that it works like that. I really don't. Also commenting about how much oil he's pulled out of Venezuela. I don't know. Are the Venezuelans okay with that? I mean, if they are, then I guess I don't have a problem with it. But we've got to follow some rules here. Certain things need to be done. And frankly, threatening other countries the way the president did today, I feel like it crossed a line. I don't know any other way to say it, friends. That was a very, very crazy thing of the president to say. The death and destruction of a civilization? What the hell is going on here? 8 o'clock tonight is the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there is negotiations going on right now. I hear mixed stories about whether or not these negotiations are going well. Nearest I can tell, one of the things that I think the Americans should be quite happy about is Iran wanted to charge $2 million for every ship that goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and then they'll let them pass safely if they pay $2 million. And if every one of those ships pays $2 million, then Iran says the U.S. doesn't have to pay reparations. In other words, pay to repair the damage from everything they blew up in Iran. Well, that would probably save the Americans a lot of money, but it's certainly going to add to the cost of gas if every tanker that goes through the strait has got to pay $2 million.
All I want to see is I want to have a safe world, and you're not going to have a safe world. Israel will be gone. The Middle East will be gone. And then they're coming for Europe. And I have to tell you, I'm very disappointed in NATO. Very. I think that NATO... I think it's a mark on NATO that will never disappear in my mind. You know, they're coming to see me on Wednesday. They're going to say, oh, we'll do this, we'll do that. Now they all of a sudden want to send things, you know. But they said it loud and clear at the beginning when I spoke to UK of all. I would have said they would have been the first because they're the oldest. And I say, yeah, I'd love to have a little help. He said, no, sir, we'd rather wait till you win. I said, I don't need help after we win.
President Trump has been very critical of NATO. I personally don't care that much. I mean, NATO has always been a strong alliance, but they are supposed to help out each other. In this specific circumstance, NATO says they don't want to get involved in the Middle East because the Americans didn't go to them first. And as you heard President Trump say earlier, he didn't go to them first because he was afraid they were going to leak it and tip off the Iranians. Well, then there's no trust in NATO. Why do they need a military alliance like that if they don't even trust each other?
President, you voiced your displeasure with NATO in the past. Is there a danger to the U.S. not being the de facto of the leader of the alliance, and then other powers within the alliance then getting the decision making when it comes to wars and nuclear weapons?
No, it's not a danger. Look, we went to NATO. I didn't ask very strongly. I just said, hey, if you want to help, great. No, we will not help. I said, that's all right. You don't want to help? Because I've always said NATO's a paper tiger. See, NATO's a paper tiger. Putin's not afraid of NATO. Putin's afraid of us, very afraid of us. And he's explained it to me a lot of times. I got to know him very well. I know him very well. NATO's a paper tiger. NATO is us.
Yeah, he really doesn't seem to have a whole lot of faith in the NATO alliance, which makes me think that this is probably the end of NATO. If Donald Trump really wants to create Fortress North America, or this hemisphere sort of belongs to them, but then other superpowers can take over other territories, I guess, whatever the plan is now. I've lost track. It sounds like he really doesn't have a lot of interest in the NATO alliance anymore. Let's get back to the situation in Iran. They say they're negotiating. Are they negotiating?
Because they're very good bullshit artists. That's why for 47 years they've been bullshitting other presidents, and they haven't done the job. And people are living in hell. You live in that country, they're living in hell. No, I think that 47 years of this stuff is long enough. They're at the weakest point they've ever been. They have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no anti-aircraft weaponry, they have no radar, they have no communication. In fact, the biggest problem we have in our negotiation is that they can't communicate. I said to Steve, what are they saying? Sir, they can't communicate. They have no method of communication. So we're communicating like they used to communicate 2,000 years ago with children, bringing a note back and forth. They have no communication.
Okay. All right. Serious question. When we're talking about stakes this high, and you got the leader of the free world there, the president of the United States, and he's talking about the adversary that he's negotiating with, I can't imagine a scenario where the president of the United States at the White House calls them a bunch of bullshit artists. Never heard anything like that before. Bullshit artists. Like, he's dropping profanity and cussing like crazy when it comes to this Iran situation. I don't know if he's trying to be the big tough president, or if he's just that frustrated that this isn't over as quickly as he wanted it over. But he's coming unglued here. It seems that way.
Yesterday in your Truth Social, you called the Iranians crazy bastards.
True.
What is your response to critics who say that...
I don't care about critics.
What is your response to critics who say that it is your mental health that should perhaps be examined as this war continues?
I haven't heard that. But if that's the case, you're going to have more people like me, because our country was being ripped off on trade, on everything for many years until I came along. So if that's the case, you're going to have more people.
Okay. Hey, listen, I'm concerned. I'm legitimately concerned. I want peace. I want the Iranian people to live in peace. I want them to have a free country. I would love to see free and fair democratic elections there. I don't know what happened to the former, or the son of the former Crown Prince, Pavli, is that his name? I thought that he was going to go in and take over as a transition leader until they can hold free and fair democratic elections. That's what I thought the plan was. But for whatever reason, he's not in charge. The war rages on. Oil is going through the roof right now, and gas prices have spiked worldwide. And it seems like this has really, really gotten out of control.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the question. Deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure violate the Geneva Conventions and international law.
Who are you with?
I'm with the New York Times. Zolan from the New York Times. Are you
failing?
Are you concerned?
Circulation way down at the New York Times.
Are you concerned that your threat to bomb power plants and bridges amount to
No, not at all. No, I'm not. I hope I don't have to do it. But again, I just said 47 years they've been negotiating with these people. They're great negotiators.
Why would that act not
because
violate
they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And if somebody that takes my place someday is weak and ineffective, which possibly that will happen because we had numerous presidents that were weak, ineffective, and afraid of Iran, we're never going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And if you think it's okay for people that are sick of mind, that are tough, smart, and sick, really sick, from a policy standpoint, from a standpoint, any which way you want to say, mentally, these are disturbed people. If you think I'm going to allow them, and powerful and rich, to have a nuclear weapon, you can tell your friends at the New York Times, not going to happen.
Wow. I mean, I think it's a fair question. Certainly, when he says something which could be construed, if he follows through, as a war crime, it makes sense to ask him, don't you think you're committing a war crime if you go ahead and do that? I don't know. He went after the reporter, and I get why he doesn't like the New York Times. No, I don't think he gets fair coverage from the New York Times. Yes, I think they're biased and they have an agenda, but here we are. The president at the bully pulpit here needs to be held to a higher standard. What's really going on here? Is this just bluster? And is he seriously crossing a line by even suggesting wiping out an entire civilization? That scares me. I mean, it honestly does. And I'm not going to go on for too much longer about this, but I want you guys to hear exactly what the president said. That's one of the things I do in this pod is I bring you way more audio, context, and clarity than you're getting from the mainstream media. They're out to lunch in a lot of cases. They put out their own spin, and sometimes it's not even on topic. But I'm at least going to let you hear what the president had to say. There are 2 more clips.
This is a critical period. They have a period of, till tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I gave them an extension. They asked for an extension of 7 days, right? I said, Steve, give them 10 days. 10 days is up actually today, so I gave them 11, I guess, indirectly. I thought it was inappropriate the day after Easter. I want to be a nice person. They have till tomorrow. Now, we'll see what happens. I can tell you they're negotiating, we think, in good faith. We're going to find out. We're getting the help of some incredible countries that want this to be ended because it affects them also. A lot of people are affected by this. But we're giving them till tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And after that, they're going to have no bridges. They're going to have no power plants. Stone Ages, yeah. Stone Ages.
Yeah, that was his threat the other day. He said he would bomb them back to the Stone Ages. What happens at 8 o'clock tonight? And is it a hard 8 o'clock? Like if there's no deal done at 7:59, does the order go from the White House to the admirals in the Navy to start launching missiles? Is that how this goes down? Is it possible that this is just a very over-the-top negotiation tactic? You know, I do see a scenario where Trump threatens, I'm going to blow up your bridges and I'm going to blow up your power plants, so that they get people out of that area so he can drop troops in there and sort of commandeer them. Well, that's a good way to clear the path to make sure they don't face much resistance when they're taking it over. That would certainly be different than completely blowing it up or, of course, wiping out a civilization. It's bananas. I can't believe this time we're living in here. You know, I was really hoping this was going to be over quick. I never thought it would be like Venezuela, where it was a one and done, in and out in less than an hour. But this is going on way too long, and it seems like the escalation is coming from the U.S.'s end. I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that. Again, I think that regime had to go, but man, we are crossing a line when we are threatening to wipe out an entire civilization. Wow. Last one. The president brought up Greenland. Hey, have you heard the news, by the way? Apparently, President Trump completely gave up on the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state recently when he found out that King Charles is the King of Canada. And he has so much respect for King Charles, who is going there for a state visit next week. He has so much respect for King Charles that he has said, that's okay. I don't want Canada to be the 51st state anymore. Okay, so, I mean, the threat is gone. It's nice that he holds that much admiration for the king. Great, but he still wants Greenland. He still wants his Fortress North America. He talked about it yesterday.
And it all began with, if you want to know the truth, Greenland. We want Greenland. They don't want to give it to us. And I said, bye-bye. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
He was talking about NATO there. We wanted Greenland. NATO didn't want us to have Greenland, so we said, bye-bye. What does that mean? What exactly does that mean? Did he pull out of NATO? Because he's certainly been very critical of them in some of the audio that you've heard in this episode of the pod. Very, very critical. Absolutely. Is he out of NATO and can you just leave? Do you take your stuff and go? I don't know how that works because I never imagined a scenario where NATO was basically broken up or disbanded. Would there even be a NATO if the U.S. isn't in it? I guess that remains to be seen. There's a lot up in the air, and this is a very, very contentious time right now, and I hope the cooler heads prevail. Hopefully somebody responsible is talking to Donald Trump privately in the Oval Office right now saying, hey, doesn't matter how you feel. You cannot make threats like that because that disrupts the entire world peace. Earlier this morning over in, I believe he was in Hungary. Yeah, he was in Budapest. The vice president, J.D. Vance. Great. He's over in Europe while Trump's alone in Washington. Great. J.D. Vance in Budapest. He spoke about this situation. Last clip I'm going to play on this topic. It's about 30 seconds long.
But we feel confident that we can get a response, whether it's positive or negative. We're going to get a response from the Iranians by 8 o'clock tonight. I hope they make the right response, because what we really want is we want a world where oil and gas is flowing freely, where people can afford to heat their homes and cool their homes, where people can afford to transport themselves to work. That's not going to happen if the Iranians are engaged in acts of economic terrorism. So they've got to know we've got tools in our toolkit that we so far haven't decided to use. The President of the United States can decide to use them, and he will decide to use them if the Iranians don't change their course of conduct.
Okay, I mean, I think generally speaking, everybody agrees they want the same thing. We want low energy prices. We want the free flow of oil. We want people to be able to commute at a reasonable price. We want all of those ideals that the vice president just talked about. But that doesn't mean you can just go willy-nilly make threats like the president did. Wipe out a civilization. I'm sorry, but that crossed a line today, and I really wanted to flag that and get it on your radar because I think that's deeply concerning that the president would say something like that. Is it all words? Is there anything to it? Are there going to be nukes flying tonight in the Middle East? I don't know. I really don't. But friends, I am on it. I am worried about it. I'm thinking about it. And as this progresses, whether it turns out to be a big fat nothing burger or this is a thing, I'll be talking about it tomorrow on Scott Fox After 9.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. Instead of giving your mom something that fades, give her something that becomes part of her home this Mother's Day. The Lennox Spice Village is a set of 24 hand-painted little houses that are actually spice jars, perfect for anyone who loves to cook, entertain, or enjoy the little details that make everyday life special. As a mom, I love gifts that help turn ordinary moments into memories. Charming, timeless, and meant to be used, this is one of those pieces she'll treasure. And once you see it, you'll want it for your own home too. Find the full collection at lennox.com/spicevillage.
I did mention that I wanted to talk about Artemis. I think it's pretty incredible what NASA and the crew did. I still have some questions though. You know, I've heard some pretty good explanations for some of the popular questions that are online, but I haven't heard a good answer for all of them. You know, somebody said, how come back when the Apollo missions were happening, it only took 3 days to get to the moon? But for this one, all these years later, with all that technology at our disposal, it takes 4 days to get to the moon. Why is that? Yeah, that's a good question. Apparently, when the Apollo missions went around the moon was much closer to where they were taking off from, well, on Earth, in its orbit around Earth. It was apparently easier and faster to get there the way they went. The way that this mission went, we're catching the moon, right? Because it's constantly orbiting around the Earth. So we had to meet it at a point in time, at a specific point in space, and to get to the point that we were going to, it took 4 days. Okay, I can accept that explanation. I certainly can. But there's a couple other things, like, why is the resolution of the cameras so bad? There's been some good photos, but I'm told that on the solar array of the Orion craft that the crew is in, they were using GoPros. Nothing against GoPro. I mean, they're fine cameras if you're surfing or snowmobiling or something like that. I never thought they'd be used in space. And surely, if we're going to the moon and spending billions of dollars to do a loop around it, we might want to invest in a better camera. Again, not a knock on GoPro. I'm just suggesting that maybe we could have invested a little more into the high-res area. The images that are coming back are amazing. Let's be clear about that. They are amazing. And there was a few beautiful moments from the crew yesterday. But I'm still trying to compare what happened yesterday when they did that loop around the far side of the moon compared to what happened with the original Apollo missions back in like the 60s. Was it 60s or 70s? I don't know. It was before my time anyway. I watched Apollo 13, but that's basically the extent of my history on this topic. Seems like there's a couple of things that don't add up. For example, the president of the United States, it was Nixon at the time, on a landline, he phoned the International Space Station, or he phoned the astronauts when they were on their way to the moon last time. How did he do that in the 60s? I don't know. Lots of questions, lots and lots and lots of questions. But either way, and to be honest with you, I don't even really care about the original moon landing. I'm just happy that we're doing this now. And I think that probably the most beautiful moment that came out of yesterday was when the commander, who is Reed Wiseman, asked that they name a crater on the moon after his late wife. It's a sad story. She passed away, I believe, 5 or 6 years ago, leaving Reed with their 2 daughters. He's raising them himself, and no doubt they are probably quite worried here on Earth, knowing that their only living parent is circling around the moon right now. But he wanted to do something to honor his late wife, Carol, and I thought that the location they picked and the reasoning they gave was beautiful. Listen to this.
So we lost a loved one. Her name was Carol, the spouse of Reed, the mother of Katie and Ellie. And if you want to find this one, you look at Glushko, and it's just to the northwest of that, at the same latitude as Ohm, and it's a bright spot on the moon. And we would like to call it Carol, and you spell that C-A-R-R-O-L-L.
Integrity and Carol Crater. Loud and clear. Thank you.
And that's now done. Apparently, if you're first there, you get to name it, and they got to name it, and they named it for his late wife. I think that's beautiful. Commander Reed Wiseman. I also love the reasoning for it. That is on the exact same altitude as the Earth is, and it's a bright spot on the moon. What a beautiful tribute for his late wife. I thought that was really, really incredible. There was some other good things that happened yesterday when it comes to Artemis. Obviously, I can't show you these cool pictures that we've got and some not so cool pictures, but I can play you the audio. And right before they lost contact, when they were going around the dark side of the moon, pilot Victor Glover started quoting gospel.
To remind you of one of the most important mysteries there on Earth, and that's love. Christ said, in response to what was the greatest command, that it was to love God with all that you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said the second is equal to it, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, as we prepare to go out of radio communication, we're still to feel your love from Earth, and to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
Beautiful. You can tell he is very guided by his faith, and he's putting it out there, and I'm here for it. I like hearing it. I think it's beautiful that he is, at a moment like this, bringing everything back to humanity, bringing everything back to love, and using a little bit of scripture as well. I thought that was perfectly appropriate. Last thing I'm going to play regarding the Artemis mission, the president, yep, he's back. Second time on this pod today. He did do a call with the crew aboard the Orion spacecraft, and there was a really interesting exchange between Jeremy Hansen, the Canadian, and President Trump.
Did you see a difference, a big difference between the far side of the moon and the near side of the moon? Was there a difference in feel or difference in look? What did you see?
Well, Mr. President, we certainly did, and our side team really set us up well to understand what they thought we might see. and the gravitational pull of the Earth has had a profound effect on the near side of the moon, changing all those dark mares, those dark patches of the moon you see from Earth. It's very different on the far side. While you see some small patches of those mare in deep craters, it's very much absent on that side, so that's really neat. And while I have the microphone, sir, I just want to thank you on behalf of Canada. The space leadership you spoke of from America truly is extraordinary. I've said this many times before. A nation that leads like that and creates and sets big goals for humanity that brings other countries along with it is truly incredible. And I know that's a very intentional, not a necessary decision. Intentional decision to lead by example and to allow other countries like Canada to share our gifts and help you achieve these mutually beneficial goals, like establishing a presence on the moon and eventually going to Mars. And Canadians are so proud to be a part of this program.
Well, I have to say I spoke to a very special person, Wayne Gretzky, who I think you know, the great one. And I spoke to your prime minister and many other friends I have in Canada. They are so proud of you. And you have a lot of courage. I'm not sure if they'd want to do that. I'm not even sure if the great one would want to do that, to be honest with you. But you have a lot of courage doing what you're doing, a lot of bravery and a lot of genius. But they're very, very proud of you.
I mean, that's nice. That's nice. I know that there's a lot of people who are not happy with President Trump at the moment. And don't worry, I get it. But I mean, taking the politics and the war stuff out of things, this is still a great moment for humanity. And I thought that was a great message for him. You can tell Trump thinks Gretzky is like the coolest guy he knows because he name drops Gretzky every opportunity he gets. Now, he also mentioned he spoke to Prime Minister Carney. I haven't heard that from the Prime Minister's office, though. I haven't read a readout yet, but that does seem perfectly appropriate when both leaders have at least one astronaut on board this historic mission. So I think that that's really cool. Before I go, I just want to circle back on something that came up at the beginning of the pod, because this is one that is egregious. This is one where we've really got to question what's going on in our politics, and I'll tell you why. We have leaders that have been elected, and some of them got installed in cabinet, and we trust them to spend our money responsibly, and we trust them to operate ethically and above board. And it should be well understood that if anybody has what's called a conflict of interest, not only do they declare that conflict of interest proactively right away, but then they also remove themselves from the decision-making process. That's how it's supposed to work. And by the way, that's not just for people that are in the federal government and the provincial government. That's at every level, every single level. If you're on the board of your kids' local soccer association, if you have a conflict of interest, you declare the conflict of interest and you recuse yourself, or you walk away from that situation. You don't vote on that because you're not supposed to do anything that could personally enrich you. That's the whole point of conflict of interest laws. Now, we've kind of set a precedent here in Canada recently where we've had no shortage of violations of our ethics rules and our conflict of interest rules. And I think the leaders have generally figured out there are no real consequences for violating those. Is there a consequence for violating the trust of the taxpayers, though? That's what I want to know. And let me tell you why. The story has broken. Our finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne, is now proactively applying a conflict of interest filter on at least two different subjects. There is a biotech company that his father runs that gets money from the federal government. His dad runs the company, and the finance minister's government is giving that company money. Then there's Alto, this high-speed rail line that will eventually, they say, connect Quebec City to Toronto. $90 billion at least that we're spending on this project, which a lot of people would argue we don't need right now anyway. Maybe eventually we should have high-speed rail, but now is not the time, and we cannot afford for that project to take forever to get done and go way over budget. $90 billion. Now it comes out that the finance minister's wife is one of the VPs at the company, Alto. The guy who's in charge of saying, yeah, $90 billion. We'll put it in the budget and make sure you get paid. His wife is a vice president. He's saying he's proactively going to apply a conflict of interest filter. How is that possible? It's his wife. And by the way, how long has this been going on? We've been talking about Alto since this time last year when Justin Trudeau announced it. How long has his wife worked there? I mean, maybe that's publicly available information. I don't know. But either way, this stinks. That's a conflict of interest that should have been declared proactively right away. Would he have told us about it if the media hadn't uncovered that little detail? Do you think he would have? And how much money did he personally stand to gain, if any? Those are some of the questions I would like answered. The federal government gives money to a biotech company that his dad runs, and they're funding Alto for $90 billion, and his wife is a VP at Alto. That's not okay. That is not okay. There's going to be a lot more that comes out of this story. I'm almost positive of it. I hear about corruption in government all the time, and it always makes me sick to my stomach. It never fails to not make me sick when I hear about the kind of corruption that is going on in our government. But frankly, my friends, if everything as I've just explained it to you is absolutely true, it's the way I understand it right now, but I understand that there's still a lot of details coming out about this story. If that is all true, that is a major violation of the trust of taxpayers. Friends, I'm waiting to see what happens tonight, 8 o'clock. That is the deadline for Iran. Spent a lot of time talking about it on this episode of the pod. No doubt it's going to come up tomorrow. I just don't know exactly what I'm waiting for here. I don't know what happens at 8 o'clock or where we go from here. But either way, I'm worried. And I'm thinking about the people of Iran. I don't really care about the regime. I'm thinking about the people. I know they want their country back. I know they want freedom. And I feel like they're close. If they can just get a regime in there that is going to run the country properly and be responsive to the needs of its citizens and that wants to create a free Iran, I'm all in favor of it. But until they get rid of this current regime, who doesn't seem to get along very well with the Americans, I'm worried about what the collateral damage is going to be, especially in the way of damage to civilians and civilian infrastructure. It's not okay. It should never happen. We'll talk about it tomorrow, though. You can bet your butt on that. And whatever else comes up in the next 24 hours. Friends, enjoy your day. Thanks for checking out this episode of Scott Fox After 9. The song that you hear at the beginning and end of this pod every day is called Hey Now. It's by Pat James and The Whole Truth. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, and wherever you find great songs like this. See you tomorrow.